Do you remember this moment? This was the House floor fight captured by C-SPAN's cameras between former allies and current Congresswomen Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. It happened just about 2 weeks ago. Reporters claim that during that dispute, they heard Congresswoman Greene call her colleague, Ms. Boebert, a word that rhymes with kitsch. Marjorie Taylor Greene later called that reporting impressively correct. It turns out that incident was more than just a momentary feud. Today, Politico reports that the House Freedom Caucus, the far-right wing of the Republican conference, has voted to kick out Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. One member told Politico that tensions had been brewing over Greene's decision to side with House Republican leadership and against the far-right members on issues like the debt ceiling. The member called the incident with Boebert the straw that broke the camel's back. This is the first time the Freedom Caucus has ever booted a member from its ranks. The first time the camel has bucked, if you will. But they have had plenty of other opportunities. The caucus previously allowed members Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar to remain members in good standing, despite both of them attending a conference hosted by known white supremacist Nick Fuentes. Marjorie Taylor Greene has not since moderated herself in any meaningful way. After all, the fight between her and Congresswoman Boebert was over which one of them would get to bring articles of impeachment against President Biden. Still, the woman who once suggested that 9/11 was a hoax and blamed California wildfires on Jewish space lasers, that woman is now considered insufficiently radical in the eyes of House conservatives, which tells you everything you need to know about the chaos that Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is currently swimming in. Politico reports this week that House Republicans are now ramping up their fight against the FBI and the Department of Justice, including a renewed push to defund federal law enforcement, a move that not every Republican is on board with. Again, according to Politico, in a recent closed-door meeting, conservative Republican Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado privately urged his colleagues to be careful about how they talk about Justice Department funding, adding, "I'm not in favor of cutting DOJ." At the same time, some conservatives are pushing to bring articles of impeachment against Attorney General Merrick Garland in what would be the first impeachment of a cabinet official in nearly 150 years. Attorney General Garland is slated to testify before a House committee later this summer. Joining us now is Brendan Buck, former aide to House Speakers Paul Ryan and John Boehner. Brendan, there was a time in American politics when people let bygones be bygones, but that does not seem to be the case when it comes to what happened during the debt ceiling fight. I personally am surprised that the House Freedom Caucus is still so incensed over that deal. Usually, isn't it that once a speaker gets it done, everybody can move on? That does not seem to have happened here.
Well, I think maybe they moved on, but they don't forget. And I think that's where Kevin McCarthy's problem here is that some people gave him a pass, but even the ones who you might have been surprised supported him have kind of said, well, we're going to look down to the appropriations fight, the actual spending of money later this year. And if we don't end up cutting spending much below this deal, then we're going to have a real problem. I mean, look, that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene's problem here. It's not so much that she's fighting with her colleagues. It's that she's become an ally of the speaker. And she and folks at home could be excused for thinking that the Freedom Caucus exists primarily to advance conservative ideas. They're conservative, to be sure, but their bigger priority is screwing with leadership. I've seen that plenty of times. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has become not just an ally, but a shield from a lot of conservative criticism of the speaker. And I think probably in the view of the Freedom Caucus, she's become a pawn of the speaker. And at times, it's not just supporting Kevin McCarthy for speaker, which she did. It's defending things like the debt limit deal. She has at times looked like the serious one, which actually I think says a lot more about the Freedom Caucus than it does about her. She is still a conspiracy theorist. But it tells you the kind of challenges that Kevin McCarthy is facing. They saw what happened, and they haven't forgotten. They're just waiting until the next opportunity to strike.
Well, I mean, it just bears mentioning that they could have scuttled the deal. They could have scuttled the debt ceiling deal if they had wanted to. Could they not have? I mean, they had enough votes to make Kevin McCarthy's life very complicated, and they didn't. And now they're angry. And in some bizarre Twilight Zone version of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene was the adult in the room who Kevin McCarthy has now lost. And to your point, how critical is she / was she in those fights where he had to get the far right-wing members of the conference on board? I mean, how much of a weapon, for lack of a better term, has he lost in the fact that she's been booted from the House Freedom Caucus?
Yeah, I still think she'll be useful to him. But what ended up happening in the debt limit deal is she helped Kevin McCarthy make all of those people irrelevant. The bill passed with a huge majority. You're really able to basically ignore the Freedom Caucus, and they hate that. They hate being ignored in anything that's going on. And they were able to pass it without really worrying too much about that, because they did have conservative cover, not just from Marjorie Taylor Greene, but people like Jim Jordan, who used to be one of our biggest headaches, was supporting it. And so in the aftermath of that, that's when you saw them lashing out. They shut down the House floor for a week. They started making demands. Now they're making Kevin McCarthy pledge that he's going to fight for spending cuts lower than what were in the deal, which is not going to happen. But it's really just setting him up for the fall. It's always for the next play. They're always looking down the road at ways that they can trip him up. They got, I think, maybe a little bit outmaneuvered on the debt limit deal, and I think they are looking for revenge next time around.
Yeah, well, they have a big appropriations fight in September when they could shut down the government, which seems almost like a foregone conclusion to all of this. But in the meantime, they're going to, defund the FBI and the DOJ? I mean, that seems, in a word, cuckoo. And yet, how much is this something that the GOP now actually has to consider inside the House?
Look, if you've been telling your constituents for years that the DOJ is not just corrupt, but that it's targeting people like you, regular folks out in red America, eventually your constituents are going to expect you to do something about it. And so that's where we are now. There's been so much anger built up, so many accusations made, that when the time comes to fund the DOJ, people are going to demand some type of action taken. And obviously they're talking about other things like impeachment. So there may be different release valves they can use for this. But at some point, the bill is going to come due with all of the promises you've made. Oversight typically works in that you search for facts and then you reach a conclusion. Here, House Republicans have reached the conclusion first. DOJ is corrupt, and now they're searching for facts to back it up and make the case. So far, to no avail. I think in the end, this is, again, just setting up Kevin McCarthy for failure. They're not going to be able to defund DOJ. The problem with all of this is if you shut it down, you do look crazy.
Well, yeah, and I would also say, what does it do? I mean, the Republican Party wraps itself in the mantle of being the party of law and order, and will be the party potentially that seeks to cut funding for the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and rallies around a candidate who may have multiple federal criminal indictments against him. I mean, the implication, is there not a price to pay for that among, conservatives out in the country, swing voters out in the country, independents in America?
Absolutely, there is. And it's a 5-seat majority. And there have been moderates who have pushed it back and say, what are we doing? This is crazy stuff. This has not helped me get reelected. But that's not the culture of the House Republican Conference. The culture is to worry about feeding the base all the time. And they don't care about their swing district, people who put them in the majority. And so they often get overruled. I'm sure they get run over here. And the big question will be whether 4 or 5 of these moderates stand up and say, I'm not voting for this, and push back. They usually don't fight back, but this could be an opportunity where they say enough's enough.
How many times can we slip on the banana peel before the joke is on us, Brendan? I don't know. And yet Kevin McCarthy is still the speaker. Brendan Buck, former aide to House Speakers Paul Ryan and John Boehner. Thanks for joining me tonight, Brendan. Great to see you.
Thanks, Alex.